Where'd it go? All right.
Hello, hello. I have
Hello
Reuben.
there.
We have Reuben Langdon
Yes.
with us today on the live stream. Reuben, thank you so much for joining us.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I want to make sure. It sounds like we're coming through okay on the audio. If anybody's having an issue hearing us, tell us in the chat. Otherwise, we'll have no idea. Reuben, how you doing, man? What's going on? What's new?
Doing good. I'm out in the middle of Wisconsin visiting some family, kind of helping out with some projects, but can't complain. Life is good. Got my spidey senses out there for, these big changes that are happening to our planet
Yeah.
and kind of riding the wave. It's awesome.
So how many light years away is Wisconsin, based on your background? Where are you located?
Let's see. I'm about an hour and some change north of Green Bay, which is it's on its way to Michigan, but not quite there, and kind of in the middle of some farmland. And it's green, it's hot and humid. We've got some smoke coming in from the Canadian fires, and it's been a little gloomy over since I've gotten here, really for the past week or so. But otherwise it's good. It's good to be in the green.
Yeah. How's the sky at night? Well, aside from the smoke, I guess.
Unfortunately, yeah, usually
Yeah.
the skies out here are immaculate. And I love coming out here in the summer because it's warm and you can be outside in the summer, which is which you can't do in the winter. It's a little too cold for that. But usually the skies are really awesome, and unfortunately the smoke is just blocking it all out. I have seen a UFO here at my mom's homestead. This was about was it 2 years now? No, it was like 4 years ago. And it's just nice to just look up and see the stars in the sky.
It's nice to be able to see UFOs every now and then. The smog just
Yeah.
ruins that, man. Uh,
Yeah, that's if
what do
one
they
thing we
call
need
them
to
something
get
else
this
though, don't they? They call them like yeah,
UAPs.
UAPs, PLOs. I can't remember what they're called now.
That's the new
Yeah,
nomenclature. Uh, is UAPs,
yeah,
unidentified aerial phenomenon. But
yeah.
it could also be there's USOs, unidentified submergible object,
Mm,
right? So there's lots of different terms and things. But you know what? I like the old UFO. It
yeah.
it just has a special meaning in my
It
heart.
it's got the Art Bell flavor to it, you know.
Yeah. Totally.
So what we chatted probably about 3 or 4 months ago.
Yeah.
What's new since then with you?
I've been doing my ongoing taking the pulse of the changes that are happening in society and our world and sort of seeing where it's all going. So I have a membership portal program thing that I do. It's sort of an extension of my show. I do a show called Interview with Ed, and I'm editing my last episode for season 3, which might probably will be the last season at this point. And in the show I interview people who channel or claim to channel extra dimensional beings or energies from other realities. And I think it's so much fun because you can ask them all kinds of questions and get some really interesting answers.
Hmm.
You can, if you suspend your disbelief in a sense, and you sort of go along with this idea that they could possibly be channeling extra dimensional beings, and what does that look like? And you hear the answers to it, and you start, using logic, and which a lot of people would sort of throw out their logic when you start
Sure.
talking about these types of concepts. But when you actually listen to it and use logic, it actually makes sense in a lot of the things that they say. So this extension of that um, show, doing in my membership portal, we do a weekly interviews with different channelers and different experiencers, as well as it's kind of got a coast to coast,
Hmm.
theme to it. um, and in addition to it, I also do a weekly news sort of update on Friday nights. I call it Langdon's Lowdown. And I take a pulse on all the latest news stories through my lens. I have my unique, as we all do, have perceptions of reality. And and I take select news stories and I sort of compile it with other news stories and to see what's going on, to sort of take a pulse and then do some, not like major predictions, because I don't think it's possible to predict the future accurately. I mean, some people get lucky, a clock, it tells the right time twice a twice a day,
Sure.
always. It's that kind of thing, but really just how to navigate it. So with all the craziness that's going on in the world, what should we where should we put our attention, so we don't get caught up in the insanity of
Right.
it all, because we're in insane times,
Yeah.
no
So
matter how you look at it.
when you talk to these people, and
Mhm.
when you're talking about them channeling extra dimensional beings, it kind of reminds me of interviewing actors sometimes, where they will
Many are
so
actors,
well,
actually,
yeah,
retired
it's
actors.
one and the same sometimes.
Yeah,
A
yeah,
lot of the time, actors are maybe just channeling as well. They're channeling what the audience wants, and that's kind of this cloud of something
yeah,
that they say, okay, I'll just be that person. Have
very
you
much so.
have you ever? I mean, you've been doing that for a little while now. Do you find inspiration
Almost a
within
decade.
your own work? Do you find inspiration from that, and does that filter into your own performances at all?
It's almost the reverse, where so I've sort of tried the channeling thing a little bit myself, and I've not to any success. That the people that I interview, they're they're quite good at it, but acting, and many of the channelers I interview are actors, and what carries over from the acting world into this channeling sense is, have you ever done improv, where you're on a stage, or you're given, and maybe an acting class or something, where you're given sort of a um a narrow set of parameters that you sort of have to make a scene of, or here's your like quick sound bites. Okay, you're this and this situation and this thing, and then you sort of have to create a scene based on what the other person is saying, and you're reacting, and you're catching the ball back and forth, and you're not really in your head. So the best, it keeps you on your toes in that ad-libbing sense, where you're really just going with the moment and the spur of things. That those exercises really help in for this channeling
Hmm.
idea. I don't know if I'm even getting close to your question,
Well, no,
answering your
I mean,
question,
I'm
but
I'm trying
yeah,
to understand your technique when it comes to performances, because I personally have a very hard time getting out of my head. I
yeah.
have a sort of
I
way
think
of
most
now.
actors,
Yeah,
yeah,
and I mean, I think
that's our goal. I think
yeah,
as an actor,
yeah. You're trying not to think about what you're doing. Um,
right?
so you are kind of running this like emulator in your mind, I guess you could say. But me, I'm
Yeah.
always like wondering like what that emulator looks like, I guess. So are do you find that comes naturally to you to be able to kind of get out of your own mind and kind of be in that moment?
That's what I strive for. I don't know if it's there. It's kind of like, doing choreo. You remember the set and you drill it over and over and over again until there's muscle memory there, and then you're not thinking about it. And it's in that sort of not thinking about it, where the those small nuances show up. So then it seems new or interesting. But because you know the choreo so well, you can adjust and do certain things. And the best uh, players, that you're doing that choreo with, they'll make those adjustments
Right.
in the moment, those small adjustments. And when you can get to that state where you're comfortable doing the choreo back and forth, you can actually start to ad lib and play around, and the other person can read that energy and play around, and that's when you get this really sort of organic flow going.
Yeah.
That is for me, as an actor, or as in the channeling sense. In a sense, you're channeling art, because you're no longer, and this may be a weird way to put this, but you're literally pulling in information from another dimension, and you're projecting it through in real time, because you're not thinking about it. It's so in the moment. You're so in the present moment now, that you go beyond space and time. No, that's really
if
kind
I
of an esoteric way
yeah,
to look at it. But
if I could put that in like very autistic terms
yeah.
for my own brain, it's almost like you are in this moment, you are in this timeline, but you are also like taking this script and this idea that, I mean, it is this like alternate timeline that you're on.
Yeah.
However that gets
Creating.
channeled, yeah, however
Yeah.
that gets channeled, it's almost like, I guess you're almost channeling the writer. I don't know. I mean, what do you get a sense then? Do you get a sense then of what exactly is going in?
Uh, Kind of. Yeah. 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 There's so from my experiences with channeling, um, my first sort of really mind-blowing experience on my show, I put myself under hypnosis, or I had a hypnotherapist regress me. And instead of like trying to find out past lives, or, or make me stop smoking or whatever, that's sort of why we go to hypnotherapists in a lot of cases. But I was more curious of, because I had seen hypnotherapists use the certain techniques to pull out sort of this channel, this idea of an alternative um, subconscious or superconscious, or an alternative personality, that from this person that's so different from their normal personality, that you're almost like, whoa, what kind of being am I dealing with? Is this is no longer the entity I'm used to interacting with. And typically that's shown in to us in sort of a negative sense in movies, and like The Exorcist and these types of things. But it can happen in a positive way, and that's sort of what my inspiration, because I'd seen entities come through people, whether it's, their subconscious, superconscious, you can give it whatever label you want, but it's clearly a very distinct energetic feel than the actual person. And like you said, like we're actors, that we strive to bring through these other archetypal energies that are not our normal personalities, but something very different. And the more we can, and you have different methods, you have the what's, Christian Bale and all those guys, they go in the what's that method called? The
I
they
extremism,
extreme,
Walking Phoenix kind of style. Yeah,
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 where they're in character all the time, right?
yeah, yeah,
It's like
yeah,
they never, they strive to be, even when they're like going to set, or they're, they're always ready. They're
yeah,
always in that character. And then you have William Dafoe that laughs at that stuff and
right,
says, hey, you know, we're acting guys,
right,
don't take it so
right,
seriously.
right. The mammoth
I'm
too.
more, yeah, I'm more to
Yeah,
that, leaning towards that idea. But in a sense, by being in that frequency of that energy of that archetype, you really pull that through what I believe is other dimensions. You're bringing that through, and you become a channeler, and you're um, expressing a different personality, and with that personality comes information, or can come information. Sometimes it's just information with no personality, but a lot of times those personalities have uh they come with a lot of interesting perspectives, I should
right.
say.
And I'm thinking now about opera, traditional Chinese
Mhm.
opera, and you watch a
Yeah.
film like Dreadnought, where there is a possession ceremony before you become
Right.
Guan Yu. This was very real. The idea that before you go on stage, however literally you want to take it, you kind of take in the spirit of this idol, this god, whatever it is, and then you become that for that show. And Japanese no theater is no different, right? They have the
Right.
face mask. Interestingly, Chinese Nuo theater probably is the same thing, which is like the more ancient of the operas, I guess.
Hmm.
Where when you put the mask on, you are that thing. You are channeling that thing. Now, that said, though, it's do you what's interesting about those examples is that there is a ritual before and after, right? So it's
Yes,
like
there
there's a
usually is
ritual
a ritual.
before you
Yeah.
get into the character, and then when
Hmm.
you don't just walk home after that, right? Like there's a thing where you go out of it as well. It's kind of
Yes.
like hypnosis, presumably.
Yeah, yeah. And most of the channelers that I interview, they do have an exercise or a modality, or some sort of process that they have honed in for themselves to get into that state. and it's a different, and they've hooked up the EEG meters to some of the channelers and have done different experiments on that, and it is a clearly different state. Like some in one of the channelers, it's a deep gamma state of the mind, which is a unusual state to get to, but the brain activity is off the charts. So, and there's a clear difference when the person is, sort of normally talking in this sense, or when they're channeling, which
Yeah.
is quite interesting.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be investigated, and I sort of do that with my show a little bit, but it's to kind of throw the whole thing out, if you're going to just say it's all BS, I think there is a lot of BS out there, of course, but to say it's all BS would be doing an injustice,
I,
throwing the baby
I
out with the
agree with that. I'll
bathwater.
give a shameless plug real quick, and
Yeah, yeah.
you might really appreciate this book. It's called The Puppet of Desire, and this is a
Oh.
psychiatrist. He's a psychiatrist, not a
Hmm.
psychoanalyst, whatever. Maybe that's the same thing. And he has like a very interesting sort of understanding of how possession in ancient societies work, and how that just kind of dovetails into like Ericksonian hypnosis. Um,
Hmm.
and I wonder though, as a performer, how valuable. Because as you're talking about this, I'm thinking, well,
Hmm.
is this useful in working in America? Was it like, did you see this in Hong Kong used at all? Did you see it in Japan? What's been your experience with people, either yourself doing this technique, or have you seen other people do it?
Oh, no, I haven't. I mean, once I've started moving into the channeling world and doing these interviews, I always kind of kept it
I
separate.
see.
I didn't really over what I just noticed, like some of those acting techniques showing up
I
in
see.
the channeling world, and vice versa, some of the channeling things, but I haven't seen anybody really look at it through that lens. I have a very unique perspective because of the, 1 foot in each of these
Yeah.
worlds, looking at it from this, like the overlaps. And I'm
Mm,
like, oh, I think there's more overlaps than people give credit to. Um, and I think the acting, so-called acting, is we've created an acceptable, safe place for people to lose their minds, literally. Look at the Joker and Heath Ledger, right? Losing your mind, or what's his name? You just mentioned his name. um
Joaquin Phoenix.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, Joaquin Phoenix, great performance in the joke, in his Joker performance. So it's, in a sense, and we've almost, that Joker, right? What is the Joker? We've created
Yeah.
this archetypal energy through the books, through the um the genre and the movies over the years, that it's a consciousness stream that, even people on the internet now, you have the QAnon shaman. He's doing a great, I don't know if you know the guy,
My
the
neighbor's
guy
got
that
his
got.
license plate. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, really? So if you look at it, like, he's been doing a great job channeling the Joker energy on Twitter these days. I don't agree with everything he says, but it's,
That's
it's quite
interesting.
entertaining, and he's emulating a lot of the
Yeah.
little nuances that, Heath Ledger did, or Joaquin, and yeah, it's
Do you
fun.
think that, in a we have a very this is very interesting to me. Do you think we have a very secular society, and like you said, a lot of this stuff is just sort of passed off as nonsense, which, like, this idea that all of it's nonsense is fairly new. Um,
Hmm.
Whereas before it was all taken fairly seriously. All
Yeah,
that
yeah.
said, we can't deny that there are certain people as actors who do this, and
Mhm.
maybe some of them lose themselves in it, and we see actors kill themselves. Maybe
Yeah.
we don't know exactly why. They can't tell us. But do you think though that we have a robust enough society to sustain that kind of, say, acting? Or are we, as an audience, are we sometimes pushing our actors maybe a little bit too far, and then maybe there just aren't the institutions in place to get them in and out of these trances or states or whatever it might be?
Yeah, I mean, we have a tendency to tell really dark stories in our uh entertainment, worlds, globally, not just Hollywood, because, there's lessons there. There's lessons in those stories, and we try to look for um the art in that, even, so in order to take on some of these roles, you can especially people who do it really seriously and investigate, you're going down some dark, dark rabbit holes. And when you expose yourself, if you don't have, I think, like you were saying, this clean entrance and out intro and
Yeah,
outro
yeah, yeah.
of those states of consciousness, then of course you're going to go home with baggage. And with that energy, that you've dipped your toe in, so to say, and if you go into a lot of the Native American ceremonies and other shamanic practices, you have very strict, um, set of things, that rituals that you do before you go into those worlds, and then coming out too. So like, if you do a sweat lodge, or if you do, and in a sense, and that's what we're doing, and we're cleaning. There's a whole ritualist thing when you do a sweat lodge. You're exposing yourself to heat, but it's so hot and so uncomfortable. You literally, and you sing and you bang the drum and you're doing these things to put yourself into a trance. And that's what the drumming and the music does. And it's in these trance states that we're able to access the deeper versions of ourselves that may need healing, that may have stored negativity. And as an actor, if you don't have responsible ways to go in and out, absolutely, you're going to take home some heavy energies. And then how do you cope with that? And unfortunately, a lot of actors don't know how. There hasn't been a good conversation around that. A psychiatrist will say, well, it's all in your head, take some pills and go home. All of a sudden you're addicted to the pills, and now you need more pills, and then that's bringing in more darker energies, and you're in a downward spiral, and then all of a sudden you're done, you're off the planet.
What do you think about the audience? There's cosplay is a huge industry now.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, people cosplay in very healthy ways. They have a
Mhm.
clear in and out. They might cosplay and be fully themselves. They won't actually be a character. But
Sure.
you and I, and I'm sure many others, have run into people who will live a character,
Oh
and
yeah.
I don't know if they quite know how to get out of that character sometimes, because mass media is such a fundamental part of not just their lives, all of our lives now are we're like engulfed by this stuff. um what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I've been to enough conventions, where and you too. I remember seeing you at Comic-Con a few years back, going up to your booth. And yeah, I mean, it's you get the whole range of spectrum of folks, and then you do have a few really compelling, really well done cosplays, but also just, you might be taking that character a little too far. We're all having fun here. Let's not go quite there. Sometimes you're kind of like on the edge of your seat of like, what kind of, because the archetype, the character, whether it's the Joker, or one that you see often is what Johnny Depp's character in the what's his name, in the
Jack Sparrow.
Jack Sparrow, right? There's some really good Jack Sparrows out there, that are almost better than sometimes you're like, holy smokes, what the hell? It's Jack
Yeah,
Sparrow, he's here. Um, so those are the fun ones, because that's a fun character and he's joking around and stuff. But sometimes you see some of those uncomfortable situations at the
sure,
cons, and you're just like, whoa, okay, dial it back, guys.
sure,
Find your outro, find your outro.
sure. Yeah, and that's again, that's, I mean, it's a world where uh there's actually well, in my experience, it seems like there's a little bit of an incentive not to have an outro. Whether this is a lot of cope for people where they're just trying to
Yeah,
escape life, I don't know. I mean, we're kind of getting to the ethics of things here, but
yeah, we're
the
going
other
deep. I love it.
but the other kind of the off gassing of that is when they come up to you, do they
Mhm.
see Reuben Langdon, or do they see this character that you
Unfortunately,
played?
yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, most people in those realms do not see Reuben Langdon, the actor. They associate with Dante, or Ken Masters, or whatever it is. And that's fun, and I enjoy that, and I try to bring as much of Reuben Langdon into those characters, so there is some sort of connection, and we can all hang out afterwards and talk about Reuben's world. Um, but unfortunately, uh, I was actually surprised when I started my show in 2014. because I had the following when it came to, you know, the video game world. I thought, well, heck, I'll put myself in the show instead of doing just a documentary where I'm interviewing people and they're just talking heads. Let me put myself as, you know, this experiencer of this channeling thing. And then maybe that'll translate. Maybe I'll get a lot of, you know, that big audience that I've grown over the years through the anime world and comic books and games. Maybe that'll transfer over. And let me tell you, I maybe had, you know, 3 or 4 people, you know, out of thousands and thousands of
Yeah,
people
yeah,
actually make that
yeah,
transition. But it was fun, and I'm glad I did put myself in it because people who do watch the show, that's one thing they comment all the time is like, "Wow, Ruben, we can see your evolution from me asking the questions and, you know, getting more information and asking more questions because you can only really, you know, everything is building off of where you're at,
yeah,
and you have to grow to get
yeah.
and grow and grow and grow, and it never stops. But yeah, I have no regrets of putting myself in the show, but I did think it was going to carry over a little
Yeah.
bit better.
No, I totally feel that. I went from I think 10,000 subscribers to 187,000 subscribers because of Tekken in real life. And then
Wow.
I saw, oh, great, I'll do a
Yeah.
podcast about action. They'll love that. And
Yeah.
I get the same great regulars in the chat, but these episodes don't get anywhere near the number of
Right.
views. It's very hard, and plus you're talking about an algorithm. But
Yes.
there is probably some, I don't know. Would you agree that maybe there is some level of truth to this algorithm where uh, there are there's these people who really like,
Mhm.
that really like the characters you've played. They like, they like those things, and then there's this
Sure.
group of people that's like, I kind of want to know him,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
that's a much smaller group.
yeah, and I'm sure that there's probably some aspect of the algorithm that tries to connect those things, but if it's a bridge too far, maybe it doesn't try too hard. I don't know what your experience has been with that.
Yeah, yeah, I'm in the same, but I think actually, my interview with Ed channel is shadow banned on YouTube. And the way I come up with that is just because some of my earlier videos before, I think before the shadow banning algorithm, I would post and I'd get, you know, 10, 20,000 views on a video in a relatively short amount of time. Now I'm lucky if I get over 1,000. And that's been, and some videos have been up there for years and they still are just barely a few hundred. So whatever it is, I think there's certain subjects that the YouTube algorithms are going to push forward because they're they're popular and they want, you know, it's like, yeah, let's get this to the masses, you know. So and then certain things that this might, let's pull this back. Maybe the masses aren't quite ready for this, and there is some sort of Wizard of Oz, whether he's an AI driven machine or, you know, a real person, you know, at a desk, or a council of people that are advising on which subjects we should let out into the society or not. I mean, it could be all of the above, it could be none of the, I don't know, but there's something there
Yeah,
for sure.
of course, and
Yeah.
that's obvious that that's there, and but this is what I always tell people, which is that, look, if you have a YouTube channel and you have your action films, let's say, and then you have your podcast about whatever it is, don't worry too much about the algorithm. I think that
Yeah.
you're in charge of what you put out there, and if you let the algorithm dictate that, then I think that, I don't know, maybe it is that same kind of channeling in a sense where when people let the algorithm dictate what content they make, they kind of become the algorithm in a
Yeah.
certain way. Like you can kind of see
Absolutely.
it the way that they talk, the way that they present
Right.
things. That's just my perception of it.
And that's one thing that, you know, I think this is a temporary phase because people are so tired of the BS and the inauthenticity of just our whole packaging of society and the news and all that stuff. So I think um, leaving these breadcrumbs of authentic versions of
Yeah,
ourselves, you know,
yeah,
who are we and what do we enjoy doing and what are we into, and you know, take it or leave it, whatever, it doesn't matter. But that will be, these will become gems
Hmm.
for future content consumers because they're going to be so burnt out by all the other stuff that they're going to be like, well, I need some subsistence. What is that?
Yeah.
Oh, here's someone who's very passionate, who has gone down many rabbit holes, and they've explored. And I love watching your stuff because you clearly are, you're looking into the deep layers of, how many people know about what you just talked about, with the on the Chinese opera and going into a trance and preparing for the role. I didn't even know that. And I've been, I lived in Hong Kong. I lived in that culture and I experienced it, and I didn't know the details as much as you researched it. So as a researcher for action and going and beyond, and the languages that help form those action things, and you're connecting a lot of dots with your research. And I think it's fabulous. And I think a lot of people, if it's not popular now, one day it will be,
Oh, thanks. Well,
for sure.
I hope it gets shadow banned because I think that that is just evidence that we're doing something right. And I think too
Yeah.
that what's more important is that you do what's healthy for your soul. And if following the algorithm leaves you soulless, then stop doing it. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do
Well
want to get
said.
to some questions. There are a lot.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
First one that
Great.
came in, JJ Hayden. He's a regular. He says, Ruben, I believe you met Kim Woo Sok on Gen Y Cops. Is that where you met Kim Won Jin too?
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. So I'm just trying to think, because we have different names for them on set, and I'm trying to think which Kim is this, Bruce Kahn, or are we talking about, Mong Cha Cha? Those are the names I know them by.
Well, we'll let
Or are we
JJ
talking
answer
about
that.
Scorpion, the
Scorpion,
Scorpion
yeah. So
King?
he's asking about
Uh,
Kim Won Jin, yeah,
okay.
Scorpion King, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yes. He did come. He did come on Gen Y Cop set around that time. So I first met. No, 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 no. Did I? Was it Gen? It was probably right after that. It was around that era when I was. Yeah, he came to Hong Kong, with, what was it? Raven. This guy, a Korean guy named Raven, who spoke Mandarin, was sort of bridging the door there for, at that time, you had, let's see, um who was running. One of Jackie's guys was the action director of Gen Y Cops. Why am I blanking on his name right now? But you had a number. You had, Seoul Action School was going. The Korean cinema hadn't quite popped yet. It was still, the action cinema was bubbling, getting ready to. And this guy named Raven was sort of like a manager and saying, "Hey, I can get talented, Koreans to come over and do stunt stuff." And yes, he originally brought over, Mong Cha Cha and Bruce Kahn, and I became friends with them. And then at some point, I think he brought over, shortly after that, within months, brought over, Won Jin. Yeah, the Scorpion King.
Kind of,
Super nice guy,
yeah.
amazing
Oh
guy,
yeah, yeah. He's amazing. Inspired a lot of us.
for sure.
That migration of Koreans into Hong Kong cinema is so fascinating.
Hmm.
Um, did you ever talk to any of them about what that transition was like for them? And
Well, I don't. It was still. I mean, there was. So Bruce Kahn, his teacher. Again, I've been out of the scene for a minute, so you have to. I apologize if my memory's a little shot on some of the names. But there was a famous Korean kicker in Hong Kong cinema in the '70s. What was his
Kwang
name?
Jung Lee,
There's
Casanova,
one. No, so you had Won Jong Lee, and then there was the Hapkido. Maybe it's Wang Zhang Li. Yes,
Wang In
Wang Zhang
Sik.
Li
Was it
was
Wang In Sik?
Wang In Sik. Was Wang In Sik? Which one was in, Game of Death?
Game of Death was
That was another
Kim Tai
another
Chong.
Hapki. That was another Hapkido guy.
You mean
So you
the
had a
end?
few.
Oh, that was
At the end,
Jian Jie.
the end.
Jian Jie.
Jian Jie.
Yeah.
Jian Jie. Okay, so I forget. Was it? I think it was Wang Zhang Li was Bruce's, and he was the drunken master, the
Yeah.
last guy in Drunken
Yeah.
Master.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that was Bruce Kahn's grandmaster. And
Ah.
I guess they all in Korea, if you've been in the Hong Kong cinema and you go back to Korea, you're sort of idolized as like, hey, you made it in Hong Kong cinema. You're kind of, very impressive. But back in the day, Samo was actually working in Korea doing films, and bringing some of the Peking opera guys. This was in his younger year. I think actually when Bruce reached out to Samo, he was working in Korea at the time and said, "Hey, Bruce, I want, for the," and I think he would originally, that's why they went back and they did the opening scene after, just a few weeks before Bruce's death. And Samo was available at that time. But I think Bruce actually requested to get Samo um, on for the main shoot of Enter the Dragon, but because he was working in Korea on a film. And and Samuel's first wife was Korean.
Oh. Does Samuel ever talk about working with the Korean stuntmen and what it was like?
He never really talked about it, but I know he had a lot of respect. So when I was hanging out with Bruce Kahn, Bruce would come over. I was I had the whole story of living in Samuel's backyard. And at that time, Bruce would come over and hang out. And Samuel actually brought Bruce to work on the medallion as well, just as part of the action design team. And so he always had an affection
Hmm.
for Korean stuntmen and their and Taekwondo especially, and the abilities, Hapkido, Taekwondo, that world. Sorry for the barking dog. Is it? Hopefully it's not
No,
coming
that's
through too
fine.
bad.
That's fine.
Okay.
We like hearing everybody's opinion on this show, including your dogs.
Including the dogs.
Yeah. Let's go to another question. This is from MyStogan73. Since you have such a high class knowledge in stunt work, do you have any tips on fight scenes in low budget productions that you think will help beginners out?
I think you've got more experience than that. But I just, Eric, I loved your work over the years. I would get inspiration from your work, from the zero gravity guys, all of the young aspiring filmmakers that just got out there and did it. That was, um, I think that's it. You just go out there and shoot and see what works, see what doesn't, play around, and that's how you learn. We and in this day and age, we have cameras that we can play around and edit, and it's so accessible. Back in the day, you had to have on the low budget side, you had an 8 millimeter or a 16 millimeter camera and cutting film and all that stuff. And it was the entry level was quite high for aspiring young martial art actors. So now it's just, anybody can do it in a sense. Where there's a will, there's a way. So just go out there and play.
Yeah, the thank you for that, by the way. I mean, the thing that um maybe I'm disconnected a little bit now, but there was a time I think when stunt performers were really hungry to be filmmakers.
Mhm.
And there's a huge overlap, and this is what everybody needs to know about Hong Kong cinema in general, is that all of these great action directors and great stuntmen were some of the greatest filmmakers of all time
Yeah.
because they knew how to compose a gag, whether it's Samu's style with kind of a montage. It is like Samo Koryun, Meng Hoi, they all kind of had that style.
Hmm.
Or Jackie's style where it just plays to this like one angle. We just got to like make this one angle work and make those gags work. That's just exceptional filmmaking. And, so much of your physical skills are probably going to be lost if the filmmaking doesn't match it, right? You're going to have to either adapt
Correct.
to that system because there are
Yep.
some people who are just gifted and can work within a coverage system very well. And then some of us kind of have to cheat and make do a magic show in a sense. And that's why a lot of us,
Yep.
I think, took inspiration from Hong Kong films. So, I hope that hunger is still out there. I know that 80s and 90s Hong Kong cinema is not as fresh as it used to be, but it's all still just as good. It has not aged. But it's
Yeah.
aged so well, I
It's
should
aged
say.
well.
It's
Yeah,
aged
yeah, like
so
fine
well.
wine.
Yeah,
Totally.
exactly.
Totally. I love the homages, the stuff that you would make, Vlad, and even Andy Long and those guys were doing some really good homage with even the old sound effects, putting it in there, and the power powder, and overdoing it, and it just it's so much fun. And the old graphics, even, and the old Golden Harvest at the beginning, that style will it should always be. I think there should be a new generation every 10 years or so of someone doing a homage to that work. And it's not because it's not easy. It was a lot of work.
Yeah, it absolutely was. I just interviewed Mars, and
Oh, that's right. You said you were
just
going to do that.
just
How was
interviewed
that?
Mars. It's incredible. We only got through 3 movies in 2.5 hours, and I was like, man,
Oh,
I or
wow.
4 movies.
Wow, wow.
I'm gonna bug him for
Yeah,
a
I
second interview.
I remember me seeing him and geeking out, on a Jackie set or with Samo, and he still, because even though he stopped being part of the team, he still comes and hangs out at dinners and stuff, and it was fun. We didn't talk much because of the language barrier. Did you have a translator?
Yes.
Yeah. So, but yeah, there was a million things that I would wanted to ask that guy and hang out with, but just seeing his happy smile on every at dinner was enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Tristan Kriesman. He says he'd like to know which which Devil May Cry is your favorite, and do you play them?
I don't play them anymore. I think five is my favorite now, just because of uh, the story is really nice and cool. Just everything came together really nice. We had Johnny Bosch there, Dan Southworth. Those are in our action worlds. Those characters well, and it was just a lot of fun. And we had, over the years, we had grown uh, with the characters, and Capcom, especially the director Itsuno-san, was so trusting in us as actors, and that we knew the characters, and kind of let us have free reign when it came to, and Shimomura-san Yuji Shimomura directing the action scenes, or not just the action, but the cut scenes. He's a well-known action director. So there's just the whole team and how we worked. There was just this trust that you don't see, especially in most newer Hollywood productions or something like that. And it was just like everybody, we're all professional. We know the characters. We got the makeup stuff in the moment, and Yuji would nod his head yes or no, or do it again. Let's try something different. And it's great to have a working team that can work on that level, and there's an understanding, and it's like, I guess, getting an old band back to jam kind of thing, make music and art, and it's fun. So that was just my experience on five, was just a really good experience.
Very cool. Let's just keep going here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Amanda Ristine says, "Are you happy for the success of the Last of Us TV series? And is there a moment from working with Neil Druckmann in the games that stands out?"
Yeah, going back to the same, I actually haven't seen the series. Sorry, guys. I know the story and the plot line so well because I did the game, and I'm kind of a little more conscious of my content intake. So right now, I do. If I'm gonna watch a violent movie, I'm gonna go watch a John Wick or something, just to watch for the choreo, just to really get, because I still appreciate all the art in that. But zombie movies, I'm kind of done with those. I'm gonna watch another zombie, and I know Last of Us is an exception to that genre, but I have not seen it. But going back to working on the game, same kind of thing. Neil was he had a very clear vision of what he wanted, but he also was very uh, respectful and curious to what the actors were going to bring to the table, as good directors are, right? So he allowed the actors to play and try things. And sometimes, if he didn't, he had, even though his vision was very clear, there's some moments when he's like, I don't know. What do you guys think? Just try something, surprise me. And those are some of those moments where you just are not so glued to the script, and in a sense you can channel the art that's best for the project at the time, if you have a collective of people that are just willing to go there and see what happens. And but you still have to have that director to contain it, and he was that director to have that perfect balance of free expression and enough control to guide, like a what do you call it? A conductor,
Yeah.
conducting the orchestra. So that, yeah, it was just pure joy.
Because that's,
Those moments were The Devil May Cry's and The Last of Us is being on set. Uh, so much fun.
I was going to ask, is something like working on a Last of Us project, it does seem to be this kind of scary territory that you're entering into. Like every now and then I'll do a game. Now I don't do much of like the PCAP acting in a long scene, but when I'm asked to do deaths, for example, like gruesome deaths, I
Yeah,
find myself after doing 10 variations, I start going to dark places. And do you have a way to kind of keep yourself from going? Because I mean, Last of Us is it's about as dark as it gets for games,
pretty
aside from Silent
pretty
Hill,
dark
maybe.
stuff.
But in terms
Yeah,
of
yeah,
viscerality and human viscerality, it might not get any more than that.
yeah. And I look at it from this sense, instead of getting caught up in the darkness, I I look at it from a direction of uh, what lessons do these uncomfortable positions being put in, with uh, I hate violence for the sake of violence, without an emotional carrier. In a sense, uh, for me, The Last of Us, there's a justification for going so dark, because the goal is not to do it just to do it. There's an emotional response um, that Neil is driving for, and trying to pull the audience and put the audience in these uncomfortable positions, and you feel things that are like, I don't feel I don't feel well, what should I do? And that's the beauty of movies and games, that can bring us emotionally there, where just blind, blah blah blah, shoot them up, and those are fun or whatever. But it's, to me, what a disservice to the art of cinema and action and storytelling, to just throw up gore or blood or action, in a sense, um, for not having that emotional attachment. If we're going to go there, let's go there for real. And there's lessons there. And I think that's good filmmaking. I think that's where we can learn, and in a sense justify. And then after, like the intro and outro that we're talking about, when you're so-called channeling, as long as you can go in, okay, this is really dark, and I know I'm in a dark space, and I'm gonna navigate this the best I can, and then now I'm out.
Mm.
Oh God, okay, go take a shower, we're done. It's that sort of not having those clear boundaries is where you end up getting you end up staying in those places, or you're not able to come out and notice that you're out, and you carry that baggage with you wherever you go. So I think having those extremes is a good thing in a way.
Yeah, and having a director who understands, it's difficult to kind of put your finger on what good violence is. But I was talking to Tekla Hutarova on one of the previous live streams, and she did a scene. It was in a warfare game. I don't think it was Call of Duty. It was one of those, and she plays a kid in the middle of a war and shoots a guy dead. But the character in the first person, when you shoot this big, whatever, this big soldier, and this guy's gonna kill you, you're this 5-year-old girl, you shoot him, and it knocks you back. You kill him, but it knocks you back on the ground. And it kind of gave this realism to it that was it was violent, but it was real. And as a father, when I see stuff like that, that actually makes it easier to watch, because
Hmm.
now you're showing what would actually happen. And then you can
Yeah.
actually, it actually allows you to resolve violence properly, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Whereas when you see violence, there's so much emotional content. But if it's only for the sake of getting a response out of people, if you can't resolve it through some kind of truth, I
Right.
think you leave people kind of hanging in a weird limbo.
Absolutely. And I feel, there was at least an attempt in Last of Us. It may have not have succeeded for everybody, but at least there's an attempt there to show there are consequences to certain actions. And, it's not all glorified, so to say. There's some dark stuff that when you make certain choices, there are. You got to be ready for them.
Yeah. All right, we have Ziad asking. He's a big fan of your iconic work as Dante. He says, "I want to ask about your experience with working in the tokusatsu industry in Japan. How was it, and would you do it again in a modern one given the chance?"
I would say yes and yes. I mean, yes and yes in the sense that yes, it was amazing experience, and I'm so grateful to have that as my stepping stone into um, the world of acting and the world of action. So many lessons there that I still go back to today in my life. And yeah, I mean, if the team was the right team. Like if Koichi said, "Hey, Ruben, come do this," of course I'd, I'd hop on a plane in 2 seconds. I'd be there. I don't care what they pay me. That kind of working with the right people for me is key. And the Yuji Shimuras, the Koichis, yeah, I'm indebted to those guys for life for having such transformational experiences with not only my career but just learning and experiencing and playing these iconic characters and doing this stuff. It's what a gift. So if anything I can do to repay that, and if they invited me back, absolutely.
Yeah, um, I've got Koichi coming up on in an
Oh, you
episode
got
soon. I
them.
got him. Yeah, we had a
Yes,
great. It was
finally.
awesome. I mean, he's one of the greatest of all time for sure.
For sure.
Um, and Mary J says, I heard that you're vegetarian. If the rumors are true, how did you decide to become a vegetarian, and was it hard?
I can't make that claim now. But I call myself a convenient vegan. Because whenever I'm outside my comfort zone, which is my homestead home in Big Bear or here in Wisconsin, um, it's kind of hard to get clean meat. And for me, the it was very easy to go vegetarian and even vegan for a period of time when I found out how much toxins and poisons and chemicals and unethical ways that meat is being raised. That was a very easy, like, what? When you find that out, you're like, what? I'm not putting that stuff in my mouth ever again. And then when you find out more and you're understanding and you get to know your farmer, you get to know about how the meat was raised and how what it was fed and the connection. I have chickens, I here in Wisconsin, the Oneida nation, the indigenous of this area are very, they actually kind of farm. It's like open range, free range farming for buffalo, and they have their own processing area, and you can go into the Oneida store and get fresh buffalo meat. And the way it's done is more in a more traditional sense. So the for me, there's a of course, killing any animal is not good, but if it's done in a sustainable way, there is a certain energy, and the Native Americans, particularly, uh, have a belief around buffalo meat that it actually contains like a chi or a spirit, and some say it has the highest chi content of any animal there is because of the way it moves across the land and does certain things. But anyways, and it's full of vitamins, and you get a lot of nutrition from that. So when I'm outside of my comfort zones, I just say I'm a vegan. Because
Yeah,
I just don't want to have anything. If I don't know where it came from, I don't consume it.
I'm by and large the same. especially with chicken because we had chickens for a while and eggs. Um, but when I was vegetarian for about a year, and I noticed that my I couldn't really get my strength up very much, but my overall performance though was like really good. I was able
Mhm.
to I was able to still sprint really well. I was able to do mocap really easily. I was able to do really long days. Did you have any did you experience any difference when you went vegetarian?
Yeah, yeah. I think the same thing. I noticed pain. For me, the biggest thing is, just the inflammation and the pains. Getting out of bed in the morning was like, oh God, it's one of the, after doing some stunts for so many years. And I would like spring out of bed. I'm like, wow, okay, where did the pain go? It's gone. Amazing. Um, and then I noticed when I slowly introduced meat back into my diet, as long as it was clean, I would the inflammation was not there. So that was, yeah. I think vegan or vegetarian, it's a good hat to try on. It's not for everybody. If some people, because of their blood type and different things, it's not the best. I think overall, the way we consume meat now, I do think that it's not sustainable for the planet in that sense. And I'm not going into any Klaus Schwab World Economic Forum, we all will have nothing and be happy kind of thing.
Yeah,
That,
if you'll eat
and I'm not
bugs, yeah.
eat bugs and be happy. No,
Although
I'm
some
not.
bugs are really good, I gotta say.
Okay. I'm not a proponent of any of that stuff, but I am a proponent for just, in general, factory farming is not a sustainable thing. And um, I have mad respect for hunters, for people who hunt and eat and process their own meat, because there's again, this sort of life and death cycle, that there's a disconnect that many of us have, that we just go to the grocery store and do our thing, and that we don't even know what we're consuming. We don't understand that life cycle that being had.
Yeah. There's a law in the Torah that says, as in the Pentateuch, that says that whenever you kill an animal, you're supposed to pour its blood out on the earth. That, first of all, is part of the prohibition against drinking the blood, which some people do
Mm.
it to absorb some kind of spirit of the animal. But
Mhm.
the other reason is that there is this concept, this like ancient concept about how we're made from the earth and our blood goes back into the earth. And it's incumbent upon us, if we're going to take a life, we're sort of responsible for that cycle. And there's a lot of really interesting kind of
Yeah.
commentary in the Torah, just from the text itself. And of course, if you want to get into the commentary in the Talmud, like there's just pages and books on this stuff. But
Well, let me just interject for a
yeah,
second. I think it's so cool that you like that you study the Torah
yeah,
and,
I
and
love
the
it.
Talmud, and that's
I do a Bible study every Shabbat, and I got a
that's
couple
that's
stunt guys that
great.
I do it with. It's really cool.
I
And we
love
love
it.
it because I study the anthropology of it, and I just find the anthropology of it alone fascinating. Just the way that
Yeah.
people would try and like you're talking about like these ways that people saw the world. And by the way, this is not just how people saw the world 3,500 years ago. This is how people saw the world about 150 years ago. This is all really
Yeah.
new. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's I find that stuff interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I didn't want to to finish about
Yeah,
the
go
the
ahead.
the blood on the earth. So I kind of interrupted you there.
Oh
So
no,
you're just
and
saying
it was
kind
just
of a.
this. It's just this idea that the blood carries the life,
Mhm.
which is why you have a prohibition against drinking it. But
Yeah.
then that the life force is whatever you want to call it. Since the life is in the blood, it goes back down into the earth, and then that creates more creation. And so I don't know what factory farming does to that. I don't even know if they pour the blood
Exactly.
out. So
Yeah. I mean, I think the old ways are sort of put into place for a reason, and we're finding out, the in a very harsh way, the negative effects to our bodies for consuming factory farm meat or meat that's been injected with hormones, and and eating GMO corn and what that does to the cow. There's a lot of shortcuts that have sort of been put into play over the years. I think from a lack of um, belief systems, in a sense. We've gotten so far away from, again, going back to this idea of channeling we were talking about earlier. Many traditions actually sort of respected those things, and this sort of throwing everything into, oh, if it's mystic, or if it's unseen, if it's not physical, then let's just, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And we're finding out, like, no, these things actually, they do have ramifications. There is the things that manifest over time, um, in a negative way, if we don't have that sacredness around it, whatever we do, right?
And also just understanding these are just like these are just least common denominators for a lot of societies, where if you believed in like this general kind of whatever it might be, whether it's like blood going into the earth or whatever it might be, you could find that viewpoint almost anywhere you went, and it kind of went that
Sure.
way with kinship, totems, and everything
Yep.
was all kind of the same everywhere you went, which is like a really interesting commentary on the human condition. That like the people
Sure.
like the Bantu had the same kind of rituals as the Celtics did. Um, but what I like about this is that when you watch, it kind of gives you another lens when you watch Hong Kong and Japanese movies too, because these films are far less disconnected from their ancient origins than American films.
True.
Like American films
Yeah.
were, I think even America itself, like post-native America, is so far removed from that stuff that
Right.
like it's all kind of just like storytelling now. It's all this like, oh,
Yeah.
it's all symbolism. It's all kind of Jungianism. So like
Right.
when you see someone pouring blood out on the earth, it's taken as a symbol rather than like this is how everybody thought that this worked. And
Yeah.
so that's why I research this stuff, is so that when I watch a Hong Kong film, I can kind of think like them for a minute.
Yeah.
I
That's
think that
great.
that's I think
That
that that's important.
you're going down some deep rabbit holes that not everybody goes down, and that's
It's fine.
why
It's fine.
the authentic you, it's gonna pay off. People are gonna
Yeah,
be like,
and
okay,
I'm gonna get
this guy
shadow
knows
banned.
his stuff. He's researched. Yes, you'll be shadow banned
I
before
hope
you
so.
know it.
All right, JJ Hayden asks again. Reuben, being on Samo's team, did you ever meet Lee Seung Hoon, whose Cantonese name it looks like it's Lei Sing Fun? He was Korean on Samo's team, but he may have left before you.
Lazy phone. I don't think I came across him.
Oh, okay. Moving on.
He's a Korean guy on
Yeah,
his team.
yeah.
Which movies was he in?
Well, we'll see what he says in the chat.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
all right, we have Alpha Proto Ruben. You have a history in Tokusatsu. Did you ever have to do any suit fights, or was that for another actor?
Any soup? Oh no,
Suit
yeah,
fight.
yeah, all the time. So in Japan, I was just the actor, so I got to wear the suit for a promotional, photo shoot, but I never did any suit fighting in Japan. All my suit fighting was in America on Power Rangers under Koichi, and Koichi, threw me in every situation you can think of. Some of the bigger monsters, some of the little minions, some of the occasionally. For the actual Rangers themselves, when they had like a bigger episode, because they had sort of the standard uh, guys on the team playing the five Rangers. Um, and occasionally they would have a reunion episode where other Rangers would come in to meet the next Rangers, and that's when they needed extra guys, and they're like, okay, Ruben, you're tall, get in the suit, get in the, your Blue Ranger today or Red Ranger or whatever. But that was rare. I was mostly just whatever, part of the team, filling in, doing whatever you can do, pulling wires, setting up trampolines, get wearing a minion suit, being the bigger rubber suits. Most of those guys were for Japanese size folks. So whenever I got in them, it was always cramped and tight and not very comfortable. So those were, I would minimize my exposure to that, and Koichi knew it too, and my performance probably sucked as well, so they're like, yeah, let's get the good guy, the guy who knows what he's doing. And
This guy's a terrible suit fighter. Get
yeah,
in front of the camera as a person, as an actor. Then
exactly.
we see the
So
real Ruben.
then you see the real Ruben,
Yeah.
which you get to see in Power Rangers and Time Force, and I was on the team for the full season of Time Force, and then this like Wild Force, and after that, I was more just a part-time guy because then I was more working with Samo and those during that time, and kind of back and forth.
Okay, speaking of Samo, so JJ mentions that the stuntman that we mentioned, double Jackie in Thunderbolt and Mr. Nice Guy, but he was Samo's man.
Huh. Okay. No, I may have heard of him. I don't think I met him. Interesting.
It's really good
He
trivia,
may
though.
be, yeah, yeah. Good. Now that you're thinking about it, there was another Korean uh um double for Jackie, but I think he didn't come on until, was it the medallion? Did he come in the medallion? Maybe come in a little. No, because he was doubling for Tuxedo. When did he come on Jackie's team?
Was he in New Police Story? Was he doubling Andy on?
Maybe. No, he was on. I'm trying to think of his name. Why am I forgetting his name? He was a very good double for Jackie because he looked so much like Jackie, and same height and from behind, even the hairstyle, everything. And he was really good. Jackie on a martial arts level was better, obviously. Jackie's super amazing, but he really got Jackie's mannerisms down. So Mr. Lee is who we call them. There's a lot of Lees in Korea.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
sorry. I don't think this was a different Mr. Lee than Mr. Nice Guy. I think this was a different
Hmm.
guy. I don't think he came on because he was part of Raven, had brought him over, I think around the same time that he brought Bruce, and on Gen Y Cops he brought Bruce um and Mong Cha, which is a Cantonese name for stupid guy or crazy guy, but that was his nickname because he was just the way he acted. He was kind of intentionally played dumb. Super smart guy, but he intentionally played dumb, and he got that nickname, and everybody just like, oh, that's Mong Cha. uh, Kind of a clumsy, talented stunt guy in a sense. But Mr. Lee, when did Mr. Lee come on? I think they were actually auditioning him, Mr. Lee, when he brought. I think actually when Won Jin came over just to come and hang out. I was in Hong Kong at the time, and I think Mr. Lee was actually kind of Chisok. Chisok was Jackie's action director, and he was the action director for Gen Y Cops. And Jisuk also was working with Jackie close in doing a lot of action design. And I remember Mr. Lee maybe had to audition for Jisuk while we were doing Gen Y Cops. Something for some, it's kind of foggy, but I think that was kind of what was going on. Anyways, just,
Yeah, JJ says that that it looks like you're talking about Lee In So, but at any rate, there's a lot of Lees.
I think, yeah, yeah, so sorry.
Uh,
That's bad for me to not remember his names, but
it's okay. Let's do one more question. This is from Tomas BR. Hey Ruben, great interview. You mentioned how karate was centerpiece on Japan's action in your days. With how prevailing judo is in Japan, so with how prevalent judo is in Japan, was there any exploration of judo in Japan Action Club or Toei?
at that time when I was there in the mid 90s, early 90s, nah, not really. I was actually surprised because I had an Aikido background, and when I went on set, I was surprised at how unapt they were at judo throws and sort of Aikido throws. It caught, but later I think that was more introduced, especially when BJJ started getting so big, and then obviously Donnie and the the crazy fight at the end of not SPL. What's the one after
Flashpoint.
that with Flashpoint? So you had the BJJ influence, and then at that point, everybody's doing judo throws and BJJ and practicing that. And I'm sure even at Jack, but in my time, I was actually really surprised at how little the throws were integrated into the training. it was sometimes we would have, someone on the team that did not professional, but trained in judo, and they would show us a few techniques, but it was not very often. It
That's
wasn't
interesting.
until we saw Donnie really implementing that stuff, and then that started carrying over.
And what about Aikido itself? I mean, you look at Samo's work through the early late 70s. It's like Hapkido everywhere. There's throws
Yeah,
everywhere. And Wang and Sik and all these Hapkido guys going over there were instrumental in that. And Bruce loved that
totally.
stuff. You see way more throwing in Hong Kong films than Japanese films.
Yes.
Then,
Yeah.
did they take notice of that, or were they like, no, we just want to do this
I
kind
think
of
in those
thing?
early areas, early days, you see in early Japanese cinema, the techniques of the idea of what is a action scene was still very much based on samurai action film. So you didn't have integrated cuts. That I remember, training with the some of the Kurata team members that had that Hong Kong influence, and they're playing, like Yuji and Kenji, and they're playing around with the cameras and integrating those techniques that and but there was a when you go back to the original Jack days, and Chiba and Sonny Chiba and those guys were very much long shots, one takes, um, old style samurai films. So if there was a throw, it would be a quick throw, move on, keep moving, keep moving. And nothing would stick. There would be no grappling it up or anything like that, because the wide camera wouldn't be able to stay interested in what's happening. So that was maybe one of the reasons, was just because the filmmaking didn't lend itself to those types of moves, and they were very rigid to start to introduce Hong Kong style camera cuts. And it was really in the late 90s, and it wasn't until the late 90s until a lot of the um, filmmakers of Japan allowed guys like Yuji and Kenji to even action direct. Like, the concept of an action director didn't really exist in the filmmaking in general in Japan. Just like in America, we didn't have second unit directors until or action directors, so to say, until the sort of the late 90s era. Prior to that, it was your second unit director was more like a in Star Wars, the miniatures or something like that. There wasn't like or maybe a car scene. They maybe have given the helm to some car guys, but when it came to physical stunts and fighting, the director still had all the say. It wasn't until the Matrix, actually, the Wachowskis, when they brought Wu Yu and Ping over and said, you're going to direct our action. That was a monumental time in American cinema, and it was after that, and when it started to take its effect in Japanese cinema. Japan was actually later into the game than when it came to that than America.
Yeah, that's I, ever since our interview, I can't unsee that because ever since
Yeah.
we you kind of broke that down, that Toei style of shooting, um, where it's just you have the hero in the center, and the camera
Hmm.
does not pan off to follow a stuntman. I think
No.
even like the suit actor for Kamen Rider, he was a stuntman. He became a big actor, I guess. I can't remember his name, but he was explaining how you run as a suit actor. And he says, so
Yeah.
make sure that you don't dip down before you run because the camera doesn't want to tilt down.
Oh, interesting.
It's
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
whoa,
Yeah.
like this is how rigid, you could call it rigid. At the same
Yeah.
time, like if you're not moving around much, then the audience kind of gets to take in the scenery a little bit better. And that's kind of sort of what John Wick is doing, only wider, so
Hmm.
that you can see the stuntman hit the ground. You notice that
Hmm.
they don't really pan so much with stunt guys. They'll just be here, and Keanu will throw the guy, and the guy will hit the ground, and you'll see it, but it's so wide that you see both of them. So you maintain the star center,
Right.
and then you get the Hong Kong fall, and you also get
Right.
this
Right.
American kind of crazy landscape shot. That's why the art design has to be so epic in that because it's so freaking wide.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of bringing some old flair into some new things. Yeah. I mean, and it's a nice homage. They're doing a great job.
All right, so let's go into our new segment, which is how you see it. We decided on three scenes beforehand.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, the ones that you picked. So we pick a classic scene, a new scene, and a scene that you worked on. The classic scene you picked was Thunderbolt, Jackie Chan's movie, 1995. It was a Sammo Hung movie starring Jackie Chan,
Yep.
um, and the pachinko fight in particular. So when you watch this fight, what are you looking at, and what do you see?
Um, the camera movement for me is subtle but powerful. And and there's a lot of quick pans, but not overdoing it. It's still you can it in the and there's a I think there's moments where the music actually dies down and you just hear the sound effects of the fighting. And to me, that there's a groundedness to that, even though a lot of the moves are super over the top and there's a lot of wire assist and different things going on there. But Samuel's usage of wire has always been more on the when it especially when it comes to say the Jackie movie, it's been on the a minimal side, but a little more than what Jackie would use for his normal. Jackie would use a wire so nobody could see that you're on a wire. Samuel stretches that a little bit. So there's a just a little extra wire assist, which gives it a little more of a superhuman feel. And but still subtle enough. So if you didn't know what you were watching, you'd think, what did that guy really do that? It's just enough to not pull you out of the scene, which some of the wire work, and and Pink style just whoa, it's like, whoa, I'm not, I'm now I'm in a whole different scenario. So that those were all there. And Samuel in general he's very direct with most of his choreography, flashy but direct and powerful. And you feel that weight, you feel that power in all the moves that are happening. And I just when I first saw that scene years ago, it didn't feel like a traditional Jackie film, but it's Jackie, my hero, but there's something different, and I just always had loved that. I love that combination of Samo's exploration, because Samo was always trying to find something new and do something different in all his stuff. He got really caught up in the shooting at 14 frames a second, and then expanding it out to kind of a Wong Kar-wai thing that was done for certain moods back in the day. And somehow Samo got on that track. And when all the Yakuza guys in the bathtub, when they're coming out, it goes into that mode for a minute. And I'm like, why are you doing that, Samo? It was like, it was cool for a day, but he ended up making that his default for a lot of stuff. If he was just experimenting, he was like, yeah, let's try that. Like, Samo, no, you tried that. It doesn't work. Stop going there. That was one of the things
Do you
that
think?
kind of bothered me
Yeah, do
about
you
that
think
scene.
that that was a? You think that he shot it at 14, or do you think he shot it
Yeah.
at 24 and then? Okay.
No, he shot it. He told me
Oh.
he shot it at 14 and then processed it at either 22 or 24. And that was that effect this kind of weird effect that it got. And I think it works great for Wong Kar-wai movies, but
Yeah.
I'm not a fan. I
Yeah.
told him,
Yeah.
but he kept doing it. But
Yeah, you gotta hand it to him at least though. As
yeah,
a he always was experimenting with interesting filmmaking
yeah,
styles and kind of matching action with it, and like maybe also just to hide the double so often in Thunderbolt.
sure.
There's a really interesting filmmaking style. It's so dynamic. You watch
Hmm.
that and you can follow it. Like there's a geography to it. You can follow where it's
Yeah.
going. You get a sense of like the two enemies and their tag teaming, and it's so dynamic. And like a lot of it is probably to hide the double, but he just makes a lot of hay
That's
with
right.
that, you know?
I remember that scene. So I think Jackie only had one day available for that entire scene. So that's the other thing, is that Samo had, I think they were in the pachinko parlor for a week or maybe 2 weeks. It was a while. And they shot the whole thing basically, and they were just waiting for Jackie, and they brought him in just for the inserts.
I see.
So yes, heavily doubled Jackie scene, but still I thought it worked so well. And I love Samuel's usage of the dolly, of everything's moving. if you notice, the cameras, even if it's subtle, and that's what's nice. It's not like too crazy, but there's always some movement, whether it's a slow push in or a tracking dolly or here, and that to me adds production value. Adds a certain feel that you don't get in a lot of action scenes, even in the establishing shots. You're not just standing there and camera on stilts. Everything's always moving, which just at even now and even though I'm sort of broken away from this the action stuff and I'm not as into it as I used to be, but for me, when I was deep in it, that scene really, there was just so much to learn from that scene. From if you have to heavily double an actor, how are you gonna and work with time and work with limitations in that sense? How do you get the best bang for your buck?
Yeah. The second scene was the new fight that you picked was the Shang-Chi bus fight.
Right? Yeah, I need to go back and watch it again, but I just remember all of the elements in there. There was just so many elements and nice homages to the traditional Jackie style of stuff. And Brad and the team working on that. It was just so many elements, and to integrate that into such a beautiful, fun, on the edge of your seat action scene was, I couldn't imagine the I'm sure there was tons of previs and action viz and stunt viz and all that stuff that went into that, but just putting all those elements in a nice compact fight scene. I love fight scenes in small quarters. They've always, because it's one, how do you get your camera in there? How do obviously on bigger budget stuff they can build the sets and do that, but there's an art, same with the well, I'm trying to think of some of the classics, but whenever there's not a much room to do stuff, but then lots of things to, Scott Adkins in some of his Isaac movies, I think he did a inside of a train fight, and there's tons of those of examples, and they're fun because you have to, now you're like, okay, you've only got this much space. What can we put in here, and what moves can we do to make it interesting? And people get really creative, and I just love watching those types of
Yeah.
fight scenes.
Yeah, Brad Allen and his team, obviously Hong Kong pros, and um, they knew what they were doing.
Absolutely,
You
absolutely.
have
And
a Hong Kong style fight scene in America still to this day, with the actor doing pretty much. It seems like the actor's
yeah,
doing pretty much everything.
yeah, I heard he did quite a bit. He was trained a lot for it and was already a martial artist, but yeah, and then you have a team that's going to exploit the crap out of that too. You have an actor that can actually do something. Okay, what can we do here? What are we going to do? So yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, the Thomas also just mentioned the Unleashed bathroom fight. I agree with. I love that fight. I think
Oh yeah,
that's a
yeah,
great
yeah,
scene.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, Mike Leader is in the house right now.
Oh, is he? All right, Mike.
I'm gonna
I was
jump
I was
in.
gonna
Yeah.
suggest you have to, if you haven't had Mike on your show, you have to have
I've been
Mike on your
bugging
show.
Mike. I've been bugging you on WhatsApp for the past 3 months to get you on Action Talks. I would love to get you on Action Talks.
He is so knowledgeable, and he will know all the names that I'm forgetting and all the people, and he knows all the history, and he was right there beside me for most of those experiences when Mong Cha Cha or Bruce Khan or Raven was coming over and bringing Mr. Lee, and like Mike was there. He was intricate part of all of that, so make sure you get him on.
uh, he said that well, he's calling you a rock star, and he says you're one of the best dudes in the business. So you're doing something right. I think maybe it's the maybe it's the maybe it's having your meat from good places.
Yes.
So he mentioned also that Mr. Lee hadn't joined the stunt team by Thunderbolt, so the doubling was mostly Chingalok, Sam Wong, and Cho Wing.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Cho Wing's another guy I really want to get on this show. I think that
Mike
he's
could probably facilitate that. If he's really good at making connections too.
putting Mike on the spot now.
I know. If he's listening, we gotta talk him up.
The last scene that you picked for the thing that you had done was Resident Evil 5, the Wesker final boss fight. This fight is epic. How long did this take?
About 2 hours. I'm serious.
What?
We mocapped it in 2 hours. Um, we had pre-vised it with Ilham Choi playing Wesker. So we did various versions, using just regular cameras on, just shoot. We didn't mocap the pre. Now you're using mocap to previs live action films. We were using live action to previs mocap at that time. So we did a couple versions of previs and we played with the edits and we came with different ideas. So by the time we got to mocap, we were very specific. We had our shotlets. We had uh, Izuka, Yoshio Izuka, who is a very talented gymnast and was Green Ranger for many, many seasons on Power Rangers, worked under Koichi. He did the flipping or he did all the doubling for Wesker. Um, and we gave the homage of the Drive homage sunglasses that was used in Blade as well. I think Blade copied Drive
Wouldn't be
with Mark
surprised.
Dacascos.
Yeah.
And then we, of course, I forget if I actually reached out to Koichi or not. I said, anyway, I knew that as long as I gave him props, he'd be okay with it. I said, we're gonna totally use that. And but yeah, it was a because Izuka-san, he was super talented and he was able to do this, which is probably a common thing now, but back in the day, I didn't know anybody who could do like an Arabian twist, backflip Arabian twist, which he was able to do and pull off of it, which gave it a nice dynamic. And then obviously mocap is quick. It was the camera work that we had to dial in afterwards. And it kind of gave the appearance that it was all one take with the camera work, with the glasses and, Wesker doing his flips and the movements and the whole thing. And the tie up with the arms and then the, judo throw over the railing. So as you know, we can cheat a lot in mocap, and all that timing can be dialed in the animation stage. So if the timing was a little off here or there, we were able to kind of tweak that with some animation and the camera work. Ken O'Hara, he did the camera work and sort of did the full circle kind of fun thing.
I interviewed him too. So he's got a
Oh, you
I
did?
did,
You
yeah.
interviewed Ken?
Yeah,
Oh,
Ken. Yeah,
sweet.
he's got an episode coming up.
Nice.
He's amazing, man. I'm noticing that there's a lot of overlap with Zero Gravity here because, I remember the Zero
Yeah.
Gravity page had you, Ilram, and Ken O'Hara.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
guys all kind of ran together. That's really cool. Ilram's amazing
Yeah.
too. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. He's a walking ninja.
my favorite thing he ever did was the Tai Chi battle.
Where milk comes out of his
Oh
mouth.
man, I'll put a link in the chat. It's just genius.
Yes, absolutely. So good.
Elrond's early stuff was, this is back when, this is before YouTube, so you had to have web space. So he would put up
Yeah.
these like really, I don't know if it was him doing it, but he had like visual effects in
Yeah.
his shorts
He was
too.
doing the visual effects.
Man,
He worked
yeah.
that was his big step into Hollywood, was leaving the comfort zone of getting a nice paycheck through visual effects work in Texas. He was working and left that studio and came to Hollywood and came and started training with the Zero Gravity team and working and showing his library of stuff that he made, and we're all like, oh my god, this is so cool. So yeah, he had a visual effects background.
Amazing. So 2 hours for that scene. That's incredible. Where did you shoot it?
That time it was at House of Moves. I don't know if House of Moves is even around these days. I haven't.
I think they're mobile now. I could be wrong.
Okay, but yeah, they were kind of the staple mocap um, studio at the time. They had a big studio in Marina Del Rey where everybody else is now mostly.
That's
But
No Moon is there now. I think that they have that building now.
who is it?
That's No Moon, the game company.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've been out of it. The kid who's all there.
Yeah, big spot. That was a
Yeah,
huge stage.
for sure. Yeah, that we had lots of room to play around with.
Uh, I'm curious because that area in Marina Del Rey, there are like 3 city blocks, and there's about
Mhm.
95 video game companies in these
Yes,
including where
including
just
my old company.
exactly
Yeah,
where Just Cause used to be, which is now Rouge.
yeah,
Uh, what what started that? It's
yeah.
crazy because Santa Monica Studios there,
um,
Microsoft,
yeah,
Activision, Dice, they're all there.
yeah. I think what started first was you had two options for sort of warehouse space in the LA general area, and that was either like Burbank or Sun Valley or sort of that little bit north in the valley area, Reseda. There's some areas in there. So cheap real estate was you had your pick there or the marina, and the Avatar was shot there, just down the street. The old Giant Studios were there, so um, it was cheap real estate for warehouse and close to the airport. So if you had international clients or people flying in and out, it was not you didn't have to sit in traffic all day to get to your hotel or get to the studio. You can kind of get into the airport and get out, and it was an easy in and out. So I think that was really the two deciding factors. Was it was just cheap real estate and geographically easy to get people in and out of. So that grew, and now you're paying 5 times as much per square foot for real estate than what it used to be. But I think originally that's what started it
Hmm,
for us anyways.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah, all the games are made there now. Not all of them, but a big chunk of them.
For sure.
There was one more question that came in that I thought would be kind of interesting. This is XIDJSJ. I don't know how to say that. Can you elaborate further on what you said about reducing your intake of violence through entertainment, and particularly how did that affect you as a person?
Yeah, it's my belief that what you put out is what you get back. So the amount of consumption is it's a for me, my worldview, and based on all the stuff I've been into, is everything is a frequency or a vibration. There's a famous Nikola Tesla quote called he says, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, vibration, and frequency. And we know from string theory that everything kind of moves in this vibrating strings. This idea that even at a very dense level, phone or something like that, there's if you go to the microscopic level, it's very filled with air. There's not much there except for certain frequencies. So if you're constantly exposing yourself to these I'll say lower vibrations or just heavier because of the content. If you think in an emotional sense, we're talking about violence and death and destruction. These are very heavy in there. When you think or feel that energy, it goes down into your gut, into your lower chakras areas, and it's like, whoa, there's a lot of heaviness to that. And then when you're thinking about, um, cute cats and dogs and free you know free animals running through the forest or whatever that is, right? There's this sort of it's more up here. Feel that. What does that feel? You feel it more up here. So being and hanging out in those low frequencies all the time, I think it pulls you into certain states of a mind, or and it's not all bad. I'm just saying, if you're hanging out in those zones all the time, you have a potential to go into some dark places. And we were talking about with the actors and stuff earlier. So that does happen. If you have, like we were saying earlier, a good in and out point, so you can go into those areas and, okay, this is this, and then I can come back and I don't have to take that baggage home, then you're hanging out in a frequency, you can kind of come out, it's okay. But I hope that kind of answers the question. So I try to limit. I've noticed now, because of maybe my sensitivity as well to some of these stories, heavier, darker stories and stuff like that, I tend to contemplate and think about certain things like The Last of Us more, and then it sticks. It's like hangs around, and I'm like, well, in order to keep it from hanging around, I'm just not going to go to those places. I'm just gonna, put my attention elsewhere.
Yeah, they call them
That's all.
haunts. They call them haunts,
Hans, yeah.
where whether it's vibrations or whatever it might be. I'm curious what you think about Eric Weinstein's theory on string theory. But that's for maybe that's a
Oh, I
different
don't.
topic.
Let me do some homework on that. I
Yeah, yeah,
haven't.
yeah.
I know
Look
who
at
Eric
what
Weinstein
yeah
is, but I'll
look
have to
at
see
what
what he
he
says.
said
Yeah.
about string theory. And there's a book called Not Even Wrong. I haven't read it yet. I have it,
Okay.
but anyway, regarding the violence, you know, I think that a lot of us might watch this stuff thinking, I don't know, maybe we watch movies because we think that it solves a problem for us in the immediate in our immediate life, right? Like
Hmm.
whatever it is that we're going through as salary people, for example, going through the day, we go home, we just want to get rid of that stuff. And maybe sometimes what movies do is that, and there's a show for everybody. At
Yeah.
least there's a show for everybody kind of in the mainstream. And
Mhm.
it'll happily, one of those out there, it's going to be a thumbnail that grabs you. Like, that's me. It pulls you in. It gives
Right.
you, and it says, like, look, I'm like you. I've got the same problem, right? And then it'll kind of
Right.
solve it in this other way that might have a lot of violence. And in your mind, perhaps your problem has been solved too. Sort of like grabs whatever that problem is and like gives you that, like we were talking about that emulator, right? And it kind of emulates that problem is now solved for you too. I hate my coworker. I hate my boss, right? My boss, now he's
Right.
dead.
Right. Right.
Great. You go to sleep and you wake up and the next day he's still alive.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And you have a choice. You
It's
either,
like a role play.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of a role play. You have a choice. You either quit or you kind of repeat and then go back and watch that thing again. And do we really know what that's doing to your dopamine receptors when you feel that sort of like relief every time you watch it? I don't know, and I don't
Right.
think it's been studied very well.
Yeah, exactly. But I do think you're onto something there. And I have noticed now that I can't, especially because I'm just so particular about stories now. And with all my exploration and these different archetypes and different things and channeling and the whole thing, and it's just like action. Can you actually force yourself to sit through some bad action? Not really. I mean, it's hard sometimes. You kind of, and only to study it from the perspective of like, why the hell
Yeah,
did they make these
yeah.
choices,
I'll
right?
watch it for that. Yeah.
Right. But you can't, like, but it pulls you out of the story right away. Like if you can't even watch, it's like, why am I wasting my time? um so kind of the same thing for me. The violence for violence sake, if there's no story, if there's no emotion, if there's no thing, it's like it's not even interested anymore. Like, why are you wasting my time? I want, if I'm going to put myself into those emotional states, like I want it to be as, you got to pull me in, and you're going to have to work for it, because now I'm very critical of anything I consume, because my time is valuable. I don't know.
But
Maybe
you're
that's just being on my high horse.
but you have your finger on something kind of interesting, which is that no, it doesn't pull you in. It does pull a lot of other people in.
It does.
So,
Yeah.
what exactly that says about us, we could probably reverse engineer that a little bit and look at
Mm.
one thing I love looking at is like the 1999 Cubicle movie. There were these like 8 Cubicle movies that came out in 1999: Office Space, Fight Club, um,
Oh,
American Beauty, Matrix, right? These are all Cubicle movies. They all came out the
interesting.
same year.
I never heard them
Yeah, there's a whole
term cubicle
YouTube, there's
movies.
a
I like that.
YouTube video essay, Cubicle movie 1999, and I never put that all together. But you can sort
Interesting.
of like look at that. And when Office Space came out, I happened to be a computer programmer at the time, and it hit me so hard I didn't laugh the first time. I had to go a second time and like laugh because it was too real. Um, but then you can kind
Wow.
of look at that, and maybe there's a lot of people who watch those. And like I think I had a girlfriend at the time who watched Office Space. She's like, I hate this. She was a cook or something. I hate this. It's stupid. These people are stupid. Didn't hit her.
Right.
So like similarly, there's a lot of action movies where it's violence for violence sake, and I watch these and I just go like, I can't get into this. But then there'll be people around that say like, no, this is perfect. This is exactly what I needed.
Sure. Yeah, there's something for everybody. And that's the follow-up to that question and everything is, just because I don't resonate with things anymore or anything like that doesn't mean I'm judging it, or there's, obviously there's something for everybody. And if it resonates for you, then by all means, go as deep into that world and explore. And but don't explore just because. I encourage everybody to um find out why does that resonate, what are the factors, like you just mentioned the cubicle movies, and you were computer programmed, so there's something triggered you which piqued your curiosity to find out what is that mechanism that's attracting you and the collective at that time in the 1999 to churn out those types of movies. What's going on in the human collective psyche to create the fight clubs, to create the matrices, to create the office spaces. Those are we have to ask ourselves what was coming up to that. We had Y2K, we had this scare, this fear around the end of the world that continues to haunt us every single day and night in our news cycles
Mm-hmm.
and whatever. So what is that?
Yeah.
I would explore that.
Yeah, I would explore it, and like you said, ask questions,
Ask
and
questions.
yeah, don't take it at face value.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Every
That's what keeps it. That's the curiosity that's driving you to do what you do, the curiosity that drove me to, go to Japan, to go to Hong Kong, to get into action cinema, to try to understand that language, the language of action cinema. And it's deep. And when you really go deep, as you are going, and I love where you're going with all this, I'm along for the ride as well. I just it's we can learn a lot about ourselves, about cultures, and yeah, follow those breadcrumbs.
Well, just speaking for myself, whenever I do one of these episodes, you're no exception. I learn a lot, and I always take something away, and that's why I do this now. So, thank you so much, Ruben. It's been awesome talking to you. Thanks for taking
Thank
the
you.
time. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. Uh, Mike, I'm gonna keep chasing you. You can only run so far, man. Uh,
That's
you'll be
right.
on this show at some point.
Awesome, awesome. I hope to see him on.
All right. Any last plugs you want to do before we sign off?
Yeah, so the action cinema world is a little distant for me now. I still love it and appreciate it, and I'm so glad for these conversations. But I'm doing my thing over on my website, Interview with Ed. It's all one word. It stands for extradimensionals.com. And we do our weekly news pulse. And we have UFO hearings in Congress now a couple weeks ago. So if you thought it was a nutcase, keep following me. You'll see how nutty I really am.
I can't wait to see how nutty you are, man. This has been fun. All right, that's why I
I'm
love
deep
talking
in
to
the
you,
peanut
Ruben.
butter.
I love
All
I love
right.
talking to you. It's been a ton of fun. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. Thanks for everything you're doing.